Frost etched intricate patterns across the cabin window panes, like skeletal fingers reaching inward, seeking warmth. Martha Caldwell sat motionless by the window, her unseeing eyes fixed on a point beyond the glass. Though blindness had claimed her sight 5 years ago, her other senses had sharpened to compensate. She didn't need to see the approaching footsteps to know who they belonged to. The heavy, uneven gait told her everything. Her son Henry was home, and from the stagger in his step, he'd been drinking again. Martha's weathered hands trembled slightly as they tightened around the worn quilt covering her lap, Thomas's quilt sewn from patches of her dead husband's shirts. A sudden, inexplicable dread washed over her. Something in Henry's footfall was different today. A purpose, a finality that made her heart constrict. The cabin door crashed open with such force that the walls trembled. Arctic Wyoming air swept in, carrying the acrid scent of whiskey and something darker, a malice Martha had sensed growing in her son for years but had refused to acknowledge. Mother. Henry slurred his voice, cutting through the silence with the precision of a newly honed blade. Time's up. Martha turned toward his voice, the lines etched by 72 years of frontier hardship, suddenly more pronounced. Her throat constricted, making it difficult to speak. What are you talking about, Henry? His laughter sent ice through her veins, utterly devoid of warmth or humanity. I said time's up. You've been nothing but dead weight since you lost your sight. I'm done carrying you. A powerful hand clamped around her arm, yanking her to her feet with such force that her shoulders screamed in protest. The quilt fell away, leaving her vulnerable in her thin nightdress as Henry dragged her across the floor. Martha stumbled her bare feet, scraping painfully against rough wooden boards. Henry stopped this. Martha struggled against his iron grip, her heart splintering. This was her son, the baby she had nursed through fever, the boy she had taught to read by lamplight, and the young man she had forgiven countless times when he'd returned home drunk, having gambled away money meant for seed or tools. Now a stranger gripped her arm, hurting her deliberately. What's happened to you? Nothing happened to me, Mother. Henry snarled, pulling her toward the door. I just finally woke up to reality. As he dragged her across the threshold into the biting cold, a memory flashed through Martha's mind. Henry at 7, sobbing in her arms after breaking Thomas's prized pocket watch, and her whispering, I'll always protect you. The irony of that promise now made her chest ache with a pain far worse than the physical discomfort of being manhandled. This is my home. Martha cried, her voice rising with desperation as her bare feet hit the frozen porch. The cold burned like fire against her skin, but the burning in her chest at the sense of utter betrayal was infinitely worse. Your father built it with his hands, for us, for our family. Not anymore. The satisfaction in Henry's voice chilled her more than the frigid air biting at her skin. I've sold it, all of it. Signed the papers today. The world seemed to tilt beneath Martha's feet. She clutched at Henry's arm, no longer fighting to get away, but simply to remain upright as shock threatened to overwhelm her. You can't. My name is on the deed. Henry's laughter echoed across the yard, bouncing off the distant mountains that she could no longer see, but knew surrounded them like ancient sentinels. Amazing what a man can do with a little practice and his mother's signature. The realization stole her breath more effectively than the cold. Her own flesh and blood had forged her name, stolen the only security she had left. For a moment, she went limp in his grasp, the shock too profound to process. Then something hardened inside her, a core of steel that had helped her survive decades on the frontier. Thomas had always said she had grit to match the mountains. Now that grit crystallized into a silent vow she would not die forgotten in the snow. Not like this. Not because of him? Martha's fingers curled into fists at her sides, her spine straightening despite the bitter cold numbing her limbs. Help! The cry tore from Martha's throat, raw with terror and betrayal. Someone, please help me. From neighboring cabins came the sounds of life, a door opening and quickly closing curtains, rustling footsteps, retreating deeper into safe homes. They heard her. They chose to ignore her plight. "No one's going to help you, Mother," Henry growled, yanking her toward the edge of the property. "They know better than to cross Mr. Blackwood." "Who is Blackwood?" Martha managed to ask through chattering teeth as the biting wind wrapped around her exposed limbs. "The biggest cattle baron in 3 territories. Been buying up all the small holdings around here." Henry's voice dropped to a whisper, his mouth close to her ear. "And he pays cash. More cash than you've ever seen. Enough to start fresh somewhere far from here, somewhere without the burden of a blind old woman. That money belongs to our family." Martha whispered disbelief, warring with growing rage. "Everything your father worked for. Father's dead." Henry cut her off brutally. "And you might as well be." The sound of approaching horses momentarily kindled hope in Martha's breast. Surely someone would intervene. "Mr. Caldwell," a deep voice called out, cultured yet cold like velvet stretched over steel. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem at all, Mr. Blackwood." Henry replied, his tone suddenly deferential. "Just seeing my mother off. She's decided to visit relatives back east." Martha opened her mouth to deny the outrageous lie, but Henry's fingers dug into her arm with bruising force, the warning unmistakable. "I see." Blackwood's voice carried no hint of concern or suspicion. "Make sure all personal belongings are cleared out by nightfall. My men move in tomorrow." "Of course, sir, it's all taken care of." The hoofbeats receded, taking Martha's hope with them. In that moment, she understood with terrible clarity that Henry was truly lost to her, not just estranged, but transformed into someone capable of leaving his own mother to die in the wilderness. "You heard him," Henry hissed, pushing her roughly toward the road. "You need to be gone." "Where would I go?" Martha asked, desperation making her voice tremble. "I have nothing, no one." "That's not my problem anymore." Henry released her arm so suddenly that Martha staggered, her hands grasping blindly for balance. "I've carried you long enough." "Henry." The word was torn from her heart, a mother's final plea to the child she had brought into the world. "Henry, please, I'm your mother." His only answer was the crunch of boots on the frozen path moving away from her, and then the definitive slam of the cabin door, her cabin door. Martha stood alone, the winter wind cutting through her thin nightdress like a knife, stealing what little warmth remained in her aging body. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering uncontrollably as the full horror of her situation sank in. The neighbors who had watched the scene unfold retreated into their homes, shutters closing one by one against the uncomfortable spectacle of an old woman's abandonment. A sob rose in her throat, but Martha forced it down. Tears would freeze on her cheeks in this cold. She needed shelter before night fell, or she would not survive until morning. Drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, Martha reached out with trembling hands, feeling for the fence line that bordered the path. Each careful movement was a small victory against the fear threatening to paralyze her. "I will survive this," Martha whispered fiercely, her breath forming icy clouds before her face. "I survived Thomas's death. I survived losing my sight. I will survive you too, Henry." In her voice was not just determination, but a newfound fury, the kind that could burn even in a blizzard. By some miracle, or perhaps the last remnant of neighborly compassion, she found her way to an abandoned tool shed at the edge of town. Feeling her way inside, she collapsed onto the dirt floor, pulling her nightdress tight around her legs in a futile attempt to conserve warmth. As the temperature plummeted, Martha's thoughts slowed, her body growing dangerously still. Yet even as consciousness began to slip away, her fingers remained curled into fists, refusing surrender. "Thomas." She whispered her dead husband's name into the darkness. Give me strength to see one more dawn. I'm not finished yet. Just before dawn, something warm and wet touched Martha's face, startling her from the dangerous stupor that had nearly claimed her life. A rough tongue licked her cheek, followed by a soft whine. A dog, not wild, but someone's pet or stray, had found its way into the shed and now pressed against her, sharing its warmth. "Hello there," Martha whispered, her voice barely audible. She reached out with trembling fingers, finding a thick coat of fur. "You're an angel, aren't you? Come to save an old woman." The next morning dawned clear and brutally cold. Martha awoke disoriented, her limbs stiff and aching, but alive, thanks to the dog that still lay pressed against her side. Her stomach cramped with hunger, her throat parched with thirst. For the first time in her long life, Martha Caldwell was truly destitute. The dog, a male, she determined through careful touch, helped guide her from the shed, seemingly understanding her blindness. Martha oriented herself by sound: the blacksmith's hammer to the west, the general store's bell to the north. She started walking toward the store, one hand on the dog's back, hoping that perhaps someone might take pity on her. "Well, look who it is," a familiar voice called out, dripping with false sweetness. "Mrs. Caldwell, we've all heard about your situation." Martha recognized Clara Wilson, the shopkeeper's wife, once a frequent visitor for afternoon tea, now suddenly a stranger. "Clara," she said, drawing herself up with fragile dignity despite her shivering frame. "I wonder if I might trouble you for some bread." "I'm sorry, Martha." Clara interrupted, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that carried clearly to the gathering onlookers. "Mr. Blackwood's men made it very clear that anyone helping you would be unwelcome in the store." Martha heard the hesitation in Clara's voice, a note of shame buried beneath the practical concern for her own welfare. "And our friendship of 20 years means nothing compared to the threat of a man you've barely met," Clara gasped. "That's not, I mean..." She lowered her voice further. "James could lose the store, Martha. We have children to feed." "I understand perfectly," Martha replied, her voice steady despite the hollow feeling in her chest. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct. She turned away, tapping the ground before her with a stick she'd found in the shed. Behind her, she heard whispers. Then something hit the dirt near her feet. "Watch where you step, old woman." A man's voice jeered one of Blackwood's men, Martha guessed from the unfamiliar accent. "Wouldn't want you to fall and break what's left of you?" Laughter followed, cruel, mocking voices joining in. The dog beside her growled low and threatening. "Easy, boy," Martha murmured, reaching down to feel what had been thrown. A moldy crust of bread. Pride warred with hunger as she picked it up and tucked it into her pocket. "That's right, take the handouts while you can," another voice called. "That mangy cur won't keep you alive for long." "I'd rather the company of this mangy cur than people who would mock an old blind woman," Martha responded, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet street. "At least he has loyalty, something you lot seem to have forgotten exists." For 3 days, Martha survived on scraps and the reluctant charity of a few who dared to help her under cover of darkness. She slept in the shed, shivering through the nights. The dog, whom she'd named Shadow for his constant silent presence beside her, proved to be an unexpected blessing, not only as protection, but as a guide through the increasingly hostile town. On the 4th day, she overheard a conversation that turned her blood to ice. "Blackwood's men are clearing out all the outlying buildings tomorrow," a man was saying as he passed the shed. "Said he don't want any vagrants on his property." "What about the Caldwell woman?" his companion asked. "Heard she's been sleeping in the old Murphy shed." "That's Blackwood land now, too. They'll run her off sure as sunrise." A pause, then. "Strange thing is, I heard Blackwood ain't just interested in cattle ranching. Davy at the saloon says there's something under that land coal, maybe, worth a fortune." You won't hear me saying nothing against Blackwood or his associates, the first man replied hastily. I like my business intact and my bones unbroken. Their footsteps faded, but their words remained hanging in the cold air like a death sentence. Martha clutched her few possessions, a hairbrush, an embroidered handkerchief, and a small silver locket containing a lock of her husband's hair. We need to leave Shadow, she whispered to the dog, before they come for us. Before dawn, Martha slipped out of the shed, Shadow at her side. She had no destination in mind, only the desperate need to be away from Blackwood's reach. Using her stick to guide her, she made her way to the edge of town, where the well-traveled road gave way to a rougher track leading west into the hills. The wind carried the promise of snow. Martha pulled her threadbare shawl, a gift from a kind soul the night before, tighter around her shoulders, and pressed on. Each step took her farther from everything familiar into a wilderness she could not see but could feel all around her, vast, indifferent, deadly. By midday, the first flakes began to fall. Martha's pace slowed as the terrain grew more challenging. Her bare feet, already cut and bruised, now burned with cold. The stick in her hand became not just a guide, but a support holding her up when her strength began to fail. As the afternoon wore on, the snowfall intensified. Shadow stayed close, occasionally whining with concern when she stumbled. It's all right, boy, she assured him through numb lips. We'll find shelter soon. But as the day waned, no shelter appeared. The sound of rushing water reached her ears, growing louder with each painful step. A river swollen with early snowmelt from higher elevations. Martha approached cautiously, knowing that such waterways could mean life or death for a blind woman alone. As she neared the riverbank, her foot slipped on the wet stones. Martha cried out as she felt her hip striking hard against the rocky ground, pain radiating through her body like fire. For several minutes, she lay there, the snow falling around her, each breath a struggle against the growing desire to simply close her eyes and surrender. Shadow's urgent barking pierced through her haze of pain and fatigue. The dog tugged at her nightdress, refusing to let her give in. Then another sound reached her, not an animal, but a human voice. Oh, there, young female, the English accented but clear. Why you lie in snow, grandmother? Martha reached out a trembling hand toward the voice. Please, she managed to whisper. Help me. Small, strong hands grasped hers. You are bleeding and very cold. Why you alone in snow? I have nowhere else to go. Martha admitted, the words catching in her throat. My son, my own son, cast me out. There was a pause. Then the girl spoke again, her voice softening. My people do not help white eyes. Too dangerous. But... Another pause. You are old like my grandmother was. I cannot leave you to die. Martha felt herself being lifted, surprisingly strong arms supporting her weight. What is your name? She asked. I am called Sage, the girl replied. Like plant that grows on hills, good for medicine. Thank you, Sage, Martha whispered, sagging against the girl's shoulder. My name is Martha. Do not thank me yet, Martha, grandmother, Sage replied grimly. My father will not be happy. But first we must get you warm, or thanks will not matter. Shadow followed closely as Sage guided Martha along hidden paths. Every step away from the killing cold was a victory purchased with pain as her injured hip protested each movement. Eventually, the sound of the wind changed, suggesting they had entered some kind of shelter. The air grew marginally warmer, carrying the scent of smoke and cooking meat. Sit, Sage instructed, helping Martha down onto what felt like a fur-covered mat. Do not speak. Let me talk to my father. Rapid words in a language Martha didn't understand followed. A man's voice, deep and suspicious, responded harshly. The conversation grew heated, with Sage's tone becoming increasingly passionate and insistent. Finally, There was a grunt of what sounded like reluctant acceptance. You may stay until storm passes. Sage told Martha, draping something warm and heavy, a fur of some kind, over her shoulders. Then we must find somewhere else for you. Why are you helping me? Martha asked, curious, despite her exhaustion. The silence that followed was so long that Martha thought perhaps Sage had moved away. Finally, the young woman answered her voice, carrying both pain and wisdom beyond her years. 3 winters ago, white man's disease took my grandmother. She was wise woman, medicine woman. When she died, many of our people suffered. Another pause. Before she died, she held my face in her hands and said, "Sage knowledge must never be lost. Where you find wisdom, protect it, even if it wears the face of your enemy. You have lived long time, Martha, grandmother. You must have wisdom worth saving." Martha laughed softly, the sound edged with bitterness. "Wisdom, I trusted my only son, and he stole everything I had. Left me to die in the snow. Then you have most important wisdom of all." Sage replied with unexpected fierceness. "You know pain of betrayal by blood. My people understand this well." Martha reached out, finding Sage's hand and squeezing it gently. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps that is a wisdom worth sharing." In the days that followed, Martha slowly regained her strength. The hip injury made movement difficult, but Sage created a poultice of herbs that eased the worst of the pain. Martha learned she was in a small Shoshone winter camp, hidden away in a sheltered valley. Sage's father, Bear Killer, was a respected hunter who had reluctantly allowed Martha to stay, despite the danger her presence represented. "White people do not like Indians helping other white people," Sage explained as she guided Martha's hands in weaving a small basket. "Especially white people who have been cast out." Martha's fingers worked the reeds deftly, her years of needlework, giving her an advantage even without sight. "Your English is very good," she observed. "Mission school." Sage replied shortly, a sudden tension in her voice. 3 years. I learned many things, not all good." Martha heard the pain and changed the subject. "How old are you, Sage?" 17 summers. There was a smile in her voice now the dark moment passed. "So young," Martha murmured, shaking her head in wonder. "I have dresses older than you." Sage laughed, a bright, unexpected sound that warmed Martha's heart more than any fire could. "But you do not wear them now," she teased. "No," Martha agreed, her smile fading. "I don't." "Tell me about your son," Sage said abruptly. "The one who betrayed you." Martha's hand stilled on the basket. "Henry is my only child. His father and I tried for others, but it wasn't to be. Perhaps we spoiled him." She sighed deeply. "Thomas, my husband, was often away working claims in the mountains, trying to find enough gold to give us a better life. Henry grew up wild, headstrong." "Like Mustang," Sage suggested. "Yes, like a Mustang. When Thomas finally settled down and built our cabin, Henry was already a young man with a taste for gambling and whiskey. Thomas tried to teach him responsibility, had him work the land with him, but Henry was restless. When Thomas died, Henry saw his chance for freedom. Freedom to abandon mother." Sage's tone was incredulous. "This is not freedom. This is shame." In his eyes, I became a burden when I lost my sight. Martha continued quietly. "He resented having to care for me. And then when this man Blackwood offered money for our land..." "Blackwood." Bear Killer's voice suddenly interrupted from the entrance of the shelter. Martha started, not having heard his approach. "This name I know." Martha turned toward his voice. It was the first time the man had directly addressed her. "You know of him, cattleman. Many cows, many guns. Takes land, does not care who was there first." The bitterness in Bear Killer's voice was palpable. unlaced with an old, deep hatred. 2 summers ago, his men burn our village near Big River. Say we steal cows. We did not. I'm sorry, Martha said softly, meaning it with all her heart. Your sorry does not bring back our dead, Bear Killer replied harshly. Then his voice softened slightly. But there is more. Something no white man knows. What is it? Martha asked, sensing something important in his tone. Bear Killer was silent for a moment, as if deciding whether to continue. Blackwood not just want our land for cows, he finally said. He searched for something underground. Under the ground, Martha repeated confused. Like gold. Not gold. Black rock that burns. Coal. Bear Killer's voice dropped lower. But more than coal. Sacred sites where our ancestors buried with objects of great power. Blackwood finds old map in government office shows not just coal, but sacred grounds. Many such places on our lands. Martha absorbed this revelation with growing understanding. So that's why he's buying up all the small holdings. Not just for cattle range, but for what's beneath the ground. Yes, Bear Killer confirmed. And why he burn Indian villages. Drive us away from land that is ours by treaty. Treaties say what is underground belongs to tribes too. But if no Indians on land, then there's no one to claim rights to the coal or protect the burial grounds. Martha finished, realization dawning. That's diabolical. No, worse than you know, Bear Killer added grimly. Shaman makes special map long ago, spirit map, showing all sacred places, all coal beneath mountains. Blackwood hunt for this map. Want to find all sacred grounds, dig them up for trinkets, destroy all proof of our claim to land. The conversation was interrupted by Shadow's excited barking outside. The dog, who had quickly become a favorite among the camp's children, was raising an alarm. Bear Killer moved swiftly to the entrance, speaking rapid Shoshone to someone outside. Riders coming. Sage whispered urgently to Martha, her hand closing around the older woman's arm. White men, you must hide. Martha felt herself being pulled to her feet and hustled to the back of the shelter. Sage guided her hands to what felt like a small opening in the wall covered by a hanging fur. Storage place, Sage explained, her voice tight with fear. Stay quiet. No matter what happens, do not come out until I call you. Martha crawled into the cramped space, pulling her knees up to her chest. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the opening was covered again, plunging her into a darkness that was no different from what she already lived in, but somehow more oppressive for being confined. Through the thin walls of the shelter she could hear voices. Men speaking English, their tones demanding. Bear Killer responding, his accent thicker than usual, his answers short. Then another voice joined in, one that made Martha's blood freeze in her veins. I'm telling you, I saw smoke from this direction, Henry said, his voice carrying clearly to her hiding place. These Indians could be harboring fugitives. Your mother ain't no fugitive, Caldwell, another man replied with obvious disdain. She's just a blind old woman who wandered off to die, probably frozen in a ditch somewhere by now. Blackwood wants to be sure. Henry insisted, a note of desperation in his voice that Martha had never heard before. He doesn't want any loose ends. Anyone with a claim to that land needs to be taken care of. Martha pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Her own son was hunting her not out of concern, but to ensure she couldn't challenge the sale of the property to silence her permanently. The conversation continued, growing more heated. Martha heard the crack of what might have been a slap, followed by Sage's voice, angry and defiant. Bear Killer barked something in Shoshone, and there was a scuffle, the sounds of a brief struggle. Search the place, a new voice ordered. Tear it apart if you have to. Martha pressed herself further back into her hiding place as sounds of destruction reached her ears. Items being thrown, fabric tearing, men cursing as they ransacked the small dwelling. Shadow yelped in pain. They must have kicked him, and Sage cried out in protest. "Shut her up," the unknown man commanded. The sound that followed a dull thud and Sage's sudden silence sent a surge of protective rage through Martha, unlike anything she had ever experienced. These men, her own son among them, were hurting the people who had saved her life, shown her kindness when no one else would. Something in Martha hardened in that moment. The fear drained away, replaced by a cold, clear determination. If she survived this, she would find a way to stop Blackwood and make Henry face the consequences of his actions. She was done being a victim. The search seemed to last an eternity, but eventually the men appeared to give up. "There's nothing here," one of them said. "Just filthy Indian junk. Keep an eye on this camp," Henry's voice instructed. "If you see an old white woman, bring her in. Blackwood wants this wrapped up clean." The sound of retreating footsteps was followed by a long silence. Martha remained frozen in her hiding place, hardly daring to breathe. Finally, the fur covering was pulled back, and Bear Killer's voice, tight with controlled anger, said, "Come out, old woman. They are gone." Martha crawled out, her stiff limbs protesting the movement. "Sage," she asked immediately, "is she—" "I am here." Sage's voice came from across the shelter, though it sounded strained with pain. "They hit me, but head is hard like mountain stone." Martha made her way toward Sage's voice, hands outstretched. When she reached the girl, she gently explored her face with her fingertips, finding a swelling lump on her temple. "Oh, my dear child, I'm so sorry." "Not your doing," Sage said firmly, though Martha could feel her trembling beneath her touch. "But because of me," Martha countered. "I've brought danger to your door. I should leave." "And go where?" Bear Killer asked bluntly. "To die in snow. Those men watch trails now. They find you, you die." Martha's shoulders slumped in defeat. "What can I do? I won't put your family at further risk." There was a long pause filled with the sounds of Bear Killer pacing the small space. Finally, he spoke again, his voice carrying a new note of respect. "My daughter says you have wisdom. Show me this wisdom now. How do we defeat men like Blackwood, like your son?" Martha was taken aback by the question. I don't know if I have an answer to that." "Then you are no use to us," Bear Killer said flatly. "Just another white burden." His words stung, but they also awakened something in Martha, a spark of the determination that had helped her survive decades on the frontier. She straightened her spine, lifting her chin. "I may not know how to defeat men like Blackwood," she said carefully, "but I know them. I know how they think, what drives them. And I know something else too." "What is this?" Bear Killer asked, skepticism heavy in his voice. "I know that my son, for all his cruelty, is a coward at heart." Martha declared, the words bitter on her tongue, but necessary. "And I know that greed makes men careless. They get confident, make mistakes. Blackwood thinks he's untouchable." "And how does this help us?" Bear Killer demanded. Martha leaned forward, lowering her voice, though there was no one to overhear. "If what you say about the coal and sacred sites is true, Blackwood is breaking federal law. That's his weakness. He can't let the authorities discover what he's doing. And if he's hunting for your spirit map, perhaps that's where we strike." Bear Killer was silent for a long moment. Then, with grudging respect, "Perhaps there is wisdom in you after all, old woman." That night, as Martha lay on her fur pallet, unable to sleep, she heard Sage and her father talking in low voices. Her name was mentioned several times, along with Blackwood's and what sounded like a plan of some kind. Eventually, Sage approached and sat beside her. "We leave tomorrow," she said without preamble. "This place not safe now." "Where will we go?" Martha asked, reaching out to find Sage's hand in the darkness. "Higher into mountains. My father's brother has camped there. hidden valley where white men never go. Sage squeezed Martha's hand reassuringly. And then, we find what Blackwood fears most. What does he fear most? Martha asked, intrigued. Truth, Sage replied simply. Truth about what he do to my people. Truth about sacred sites he destroy. Truth that would make government men in Washington City very angry. The next morning before dawn, they began their journey higher into the mountains. Bear Killer led the way, with Sage guiding Martha behind him. Shadow ranged ahead and behind, alert for any sign of pursuit. The going was slow and treacherous, especially for Martha, whose hips still pained her with each step. But she gritted her teeth and pressed on, determined not to be the weak link in their escape. They traveled for most of the day, stopping only briefly for rest and food. As afternoon faded into evening, Martha felt the path growing steeper, rockier. Her fatigue was bone deep, but she forced herself to continue, driven by a new purpose. Not just survival now, but justice. Not much further, Sage encouraged her. Brother camped just beyond ridge. Martha nodded, too breathless to speak. The walking stick Bear Killer had carved for her tapped against the stones, providing both support and information about the path ahead. Just as the last warmth of the sun was fading from the air, Shadow began to bark excitedly, not his alarm bark, but a sound of greeting. Martha heard answering calls in the distance, human voices, the neighing of horses. We are here, Sage announced, relief evident in her voice. My uncle's camp. The reception at the camp was mixed. Voices of alarm and suspicion rose as Bear Killer explained Martha's presence. She stood silently beside Sage, aware of being assessed by unseen eyes. Finally, an older voice spoke, a woman, her English heavily accented, but clear. The white grandmother may stay in my lodge, she declared, silencing the whispers with her authoritative tone. I am Rainflower, sister to Bear Killer's mother. In my lodge none will harm her. Thank you, Martha said, inclining her head in what she hoped was the right direction. Rainflower's gnarled hand took Martha's arm. Come, you are tired, hungry. Rest now, talk later. That night, in the warmth of Rainflower's lodge, Martha ate her first proper meal. In days, a rich stew of rabbit and wild roots that filled her belly and restored some of her strength. As she sat beside the small fire, wrapped in soft furs, Rainflower spoke little, but what she did say was direct and perceptive. Your eyes see nothing, but you watch with ears, with hands. Good. Many people with eyes still blind to what matters. I've had to learn, Martha replied. When I first lost my sight, I wanted to die. But then I realized there are other ways to see. Rainflower seemed to approve of this answer. Tomorrow you tell story to children. Good for them to hear white grandmothers speak. Learn not all white people bring death. The next morning, Martha found herself seated on a blanket outside Rainflower's lodge, surrounded by the curious voices of children. At first, she was hesitant, uncertain what to share. But then she began to speak of her early days on the frontier of the journey west with Thomas, of building their first home, of the challenges and joys of carving a life from the wilderness. The children listened attentively. When she described losing her sight, a small hand touched her face gently. Does it hurt? A young voice asked. Not seeing. Martha considered the question carefully. Not physically, she replied. But sometimes I miss seeing the faces of people I care about, like all of you. I can hear your voices, but I can't see your smiles. I am smiling now, the child said earnestly. Very big, all teeth showing. Martha laughed, reaching out to touch the child's face, feeling the stretched cheeks of a wide grin. Yes, I can tell. Thank you for sharing your smile with me. As the days turned into weeks, Martha found herself becoming an accepted part of the camp. She learned to identify each person by their footsteps, their voices, the unique rhythm of their movements. She helped with tasks. She could manage preparing food, weaving baskets, telling stories to the children. In return, the Shoshone taught her their songs, their legends, their ways of understanding the world. Sage remained her closest companion, guiding her through the unfamiliar terrain, describing the landscape around them, translating when necessary. Through Sage, Martha began to learn the Shoshone language, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds but persisting with determination. One crisp morning, Shadow's warning bark alerted the camp to approaching riders. "Stay here," Sage instructed Martha, pushing her inside Rainflower's lodge. "Do not come out." Martha sat in tense silence as voices raised outside Bear Killer and several others speaking rapidly in Shoshone. Then another voice joined in, speaking broken English with a heavy accent, a messenger from another band of Shoshone. Though she couldn't understand most of what was said, Martha caught enough words to piece together a disturbing picture. Blackwood's men were systematically searching the mountains, burning camps, interrogating anyone they found about the location of the spirit map. Villages that resisted were destroyed, their inhabitants scattered or worse. When Sage finally returned to the lodge, Martha could hear the tension vibrating in her voice. Blackwood men burning camps to south, getting closer. 5 villages gone in last moon. They hunt for sacred map. And for you. Me. Martha sat up straighter. Why would they still be hunting me so relentlessly? It's been weeks. Not just you now. Sage explained, dropping her voice to a whisper, though no one else was in the lodge. Your son in terrible danger too. He betrayed Blackwood. What do you mean? Martha asked, her heart constricting despite everything. Sage settled beside her. Henry take money for land, then steal more from Blackwood's safe. Many dollars. She paused. But worse, he finds spirit map in Blackwood's private office. Ancient map showing all sacred sites, all coal deposits. Map made by great Shoshone shaman 100 years ago, stolen by government men, then stolen by Blackwood. And Henry took it. Martha whispered, shock coursing through her. Yes. And papers too, government papers showing Blackwood planned to drive all tribes from mountains with help from corrupt army officers. Planned to claim all coal, all sacred objects, all mountains. Sage's voice trembled with suppressed fury. Planned to kill any Indians who resist. Martha absorbed this news with growing horror. So that's why Blackwood is searching so desperately. Not just for me or Henry, but for evidence of his crimes. Yes. Sage confirmed grimly. Without map and papers, Blackwood cannot prove claim to sacred lands, cannot show army where to attack villages, cannot mine coal in secret. What will happen now? We move camp again, Sage said firmly. Higher, more hidden. But first, she hesitated, and Martha could hear the reluctance in her voice. My father say we must know more about what happens in Valley. What papers Henry took. I go down to trading post at River Bend. Listen to white man talk. No. Martha reached out, finding Sage's arm and gripping it tightly. It's too dangerous. If Blackwood's men see you, I go many times before, Sage countered. Sell baskets, listen to talk. No one notice Indian girl in corner. But this time, they're looking specifically for anyone connected to me or the Shoshone. Martha argued. Please, Sage, don't risk yourself. Must know enemy plans. Sage replied, her tone final. I leave at dawn, return before moon rises tomorrow. Martha knew further argument was futile. Instead, she fumbled at her neck for the silver locket, the one possession she had managed to keep through everything. Take this, she said, pressing it into Sage's hand. What is it? A locket, a special kind of necklace. It contains a lock of my husband's hair. Thomas always protected me. Maybe he can watch over you now. Martha's voice caught. But you must promise to return it to me yourself. Do you understand? Not through a messenger. You yourself must bring it back. There was a pause, then Sage's arms wrapped around Martha in a fierce embrace. I return it to you tomorrow, she promised. With my own hands. After Sage's departure, the day dragged by with excruciating slowness. Martha tried to keep herself busy, helping Rainflower with her daily tasks, but her mind constantly returned to Sage, imagining all manner of dangers befalling the brave young woman. As evening approached, Bearkiller called the camp together. Martha felt a strong hand, guiding her to sit near the central fire. The conversation flowed around her in Shoshone, but the tension was palpable, even without understanding the words. What's happening? Martha finally asked Rainflower. Smoke signals from South Ridge, the older woman explained grimly. Blackwood men riding this way, many guns, many horses. Martha's heart clenched with fear. And Sage, has she returned? Not yet, Rainflower replied. Path from trading post comes from south. She must pass through where white men ride. Bearkiller spoke again, his deep voice commanding attention. There was a flurry of activity, people moving, gathering belongings, speaking in urgent tones. We prepare to move, Rainflower told Martha. Hide deeper in mountains. Some warriors stay watch for Sage, lead her to new camp if she returns. If, Martha seized on the word. You mean when she returns? Rainflower's calloused hand patted Martha's arm. Yes, grandmother. When? But the doubt in her voice was unmistakable. Martha felt a cold dread settling in her bones. If anything happened to Sage because of her, I should turn myself in, Martha said suddenly. If I go to Blackwood's men, they'll stop searching. The camp will be safe. Sage will be safe. No. Bearkiller's voice cut through the night. This not about you anymore. Blackwood wants spirit map, wants sacred sites, wants coal beneath mountains. You are just excused now. But Henry, your son made his own trouble. Bearkiller interrupted. He steal from Blackwood. Steal map that proves Blackwood break federal law. Now, Blackwood hunt both of you. Hunt my daughter too if he knows she help you. A commotion at the edge of camp cut short their conversation. Martha heard rapid footfalls, excited voices. Then, to her immense relief, Sage's breathless voice called out, Father, grandmother. Martha stood, arms outstretched. Sage rushed into them, her slender body trembling with exertion. And what Martha realized with alarm was fear, raw, primal fear that she could feel in the girl's racing heartbeat. You're safe, Martha murmured, embracing her tightly. Thank God you're safe. Must move. Sage panted, pulling back. Blackwood men very close, but first must tell what I learned, terrible things. The camp gathered to hear Sage's report. Shadow pressed against Martha's legs as Sage's story unfolded, first in Shoshone for the others, then in English for Martha's benefit. Map your son stole shows more than coal and sacred sites. Sage explained, still breathless from her hurried return. It shows tunnels already dug under treaty lands. Blackwood stealing coal for months, maybe years. But also, her voice dropped even lower. Map marks burial grounds of ancient chiefs. Places with powerful medicine objects. Objects government want for museum in Washington City. How do you know this? Martha asked. Overheard Blackwood lieutenant in trading post. Very drunk, very angry. Say Blackwood made deal with government men. He find ancient objects, they look other way, about coal mining, about driving Indians from land. Sage's voice hardened. They plan to destroy all evidence that land ever belonged to Shoshone. That's why he's hunting so desperately for the map, Martha realized. Not just to hide his crimes, but because it proves the locations of sites valuable to both him and the government. Yes. And now your son has this map. He tried to blackmail Blackwood, demand more money to keep silent. Sage paused, but Blackwood will not pay. will only kill. And Henry, where is he now? I'm coming here, Sage said urgently. Following tracker hired by Blackwood. Very good tracker, half Apache. But Henry know mountains too. He slip away from Blackwood men now trying to reach you. Me. Martha's voice rose in shock. Why would he seek me out now? He need place to hide, Sage explained. Think Indians help you, maybe help him too. But more. She lowered her voice further. He brings map, thinks it valuable to us. So now he wants to use the Shoshone as well. Martha said bitterly. Perhaps, Sage admitted. Or perhaps he finally see truth of what Blackwood doing. Trading post man say Henry very angry when learn about burial grounds, about plan to kill Indians who resist. Bear Killer spoke rapidly in Shoshone, his tone urgent. Sage responded, then turned back to Martha. We must go now. Higher camp already prepared. Some stay here, set trap for Blackwood men. Make them think we all still here. A trap, Martha echoed. But they'll have guns, many men. No fight. Bear Killer cut in. Waste of life. Just delay. Make them chase shadows while we escape. There was a grim satisfaction in his voice. Indians good at disappearing. The evacuation proceeded with practiced efficiency. Within an hour, Martha found herself being guided along a steep, narrow trail, one hand on Sage's shoulder, the other gripping her walking stick. Rainflower and most of the women and children moved ahead of them, while Bear Killer and the warriors brought up the rear. The path grew increasingly difficult. Several times, Martha stumbled, only Sage's quick reactions preventing a fall. Rest. Sage finally insisted, guiding Martha to a boulder. Drink water. Martha accepted the water skin gratefully, taking small sips. How much farther? She asked when she could speak again. Not far now. Hidden valley beyond next ridge. A sudden sharp bark from Shadow made them both freeze. The dog had been ranging ahead, but now came racing back down the path. Sage gripped Martha's arm. Someone comes, she whispered. Quick off trail. Martha found herself being pulled into the underbrush. Sage's hand clamped over her mouth. They huddled together, Martha's heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would give them away. Footsteps approached, a single person moving with uncertain stealth. Not the measured tread of an Indian, but the heavier gait of a white man. Shadow growled low in his throat, but at Sage's whispered command, fell silent. The footsteps paused and then continued past their hiding place. After they had faded, Sage slowly removed her hand from Martha's mouth. Who was it? Martha whispered. Not see face, Sage replied softly. But walk like hurt, limping. Martha's blood ran cold. Henry was thrown from a horse last year. Broke his leg. It never healed quite right. Your son, Sage confirmed grimly. He find trail to upper camp. Must warn others. How we can't go back down and he's between us and the others ahead. Sage was silent a moment. I know different path. Harder but faster. Can reach valley before him warn people. Then we should hurry. Martha urged, struggling to her feet. Not we, Sage corrected. I go alone. Move faster. You wait here hidden. I return with help. No. Martha protested, suddenly gripped by fear. I won't let you go alone. It's too dangerous. More dangerous for you, Sage insisted. Path very bad. Need eyes to see way. Her voice softened. Trust me, grandmother. Shadow stay with you, keep you safe. Martha wanted to argue further, but she knew Sage was right. Promise me you'll be careful, she said at last. Always careful. Sage replied, giving Martha's hand one last squeeze. Stay here. Do not move. With that, Sage was gone, her footsteps quickly fading. Martha sank back against a tree trunk, one hand buried in Shadow's fur, and waited, struggling against the growing sense of foreboding that pressed down on her. Time passed with excruciating slowness. Every sound sent fresh waves of anxiety through Martha. She strained her ears for the sound of returning footsteps, for Sage's voice. Instead, what she heard turned her blood to ice. "I know you're here somewhere, Mother." Henry's voice, so familiar, yet now so terrible, came from just down the trail. Shadow tensed beside Martha, a low growl building in his throat. She laid a restraining hand on the dog's neck. "The Indians have been helping you, haven't they?" Henry continued, drawing closer. "Figured as much when I heard about a blind white woman up in the mountains." Martha held her breath, pressing herself against the tree, willing herself to melt into it. "I need your help, Mother." Henry's voice had taken on a wheedling quality she remembered from his childhood. "Blackwood's trying to kill me, all over a misunderstanding about some money and papers." Shadow's growl deepened, and Martha tightened her grip on his fur. "I know you can hear me." Henry called his voice closer now. "I've got something Blackwood wants, something the Indians would want too. A map showing where all the coal is, where all their precious sacred sites are. Worth a fortune to the right people." Martha couldn't help the small gasp that escaped her lips. The sound was enough. The underbrush parted, and she knew Henry was standing before her. "There you are," he said, feigning warmth. "Been looking all over for you, Mother." Shadow snarled, placing himself between Martha and Henry. "Call off your dog before I put a bullet in him," Henry warned, the false warmth evaporating. "Shadow, stay." Martha commanded, laying a calming hand on the dog's back. To Henry she said, "Why are you really here? We both know you're not concerned about my welfare." "Fair enough," Henry replied, dropping the pretense. "I need your help. Blackwood's trying to kill me, and I've got something that could destroy him, something your Indian friends would find very interesting." "The spirit map," Martha said flatly. Henry's surprise was evident in his voice. "You know about that? I know Blackwood stole it from the government, who stole it from the Shoshone. And I know you stole it from Blackwood, not out of any concern for justice, but to blackmail him." "To details," Henry dismissed with a nervous laugh. "The point is, I have it now. And I also have papers showing Blackwood's plans to drive the Indians off their land, dig up their burial grounds, mine coal illegally. Evidence that could put him away for life." "And what do you want from me?" Martha asked coldly. "An introduction to your Indian friends," Henry replied. "A safe place to hide while I figure out my next move. They help you, they can help me. Why should they? What do you offer except more trouble? The map, of course. And something else they might not know." Henry lowered his voice. "Blackwood's got a meeting with government officials tomorrow night, at the old mining camp by Devil's Creek. They're planning the final push to clear all Indians from the coal-rich lands. With the right people in the right place, you'd sell out Blackwood to save yourself?" Martha concluded. "I prefer to think of it as correcting a mistake," Henry countered. "Look, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm a bastard, I know that. But Blackwood is worse. He's killed dozens of Indians, already plans to kill hundreds more. Stop him, and maybe that balances the scales a little for what I did to you." Martha was silent, weighing her son's words, searching for truth among the self-serving justifications. "You left me to die in the snow," she finally said. "Why should I believe you care about anyone now?" Before Henry could answer, Shadow suddenly raised his head, ears pricked forward. A low warning growl rumbled in his chest. "Someone's coming," Henry hissed, grabbing Martha's arm. "We need to move." "No," Martha pulled back. "It could be Sage returning. Or it could be Blackwood's men." Henry countered urgently. "They were right behind me. Come on." Shadow lunged suddenly, his warning growl erupting into a full-throated bark. There was a crack of a gunshot from the direction of the trail, and the dog yelped in pain. Martha screamed, reaching blindly for him. Damn it. Henry swore, drawing his own gun. They found us. Move, Mother. Martha's hands found. Shadow felt the hot blood seeping from what seemed to be a graze along his flank. The dog trembled beneath her touch, but remained standing still, growling toward the threat. Get up. Henry grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet. They'll kill us both if they find us. Another shot rang out, splintering bark from the tree beside them. Henry returned fire, then pulled Martha deeper into the forest, away from the trail. Shadow limped alongside them, alert despite his injury. There's a mining cabin not far from here. Henry panted as they crashed through the underbrush. We can hide there until dark. What about Sage? Martha gasped, struggling to keep up. She'll come back looking for me. If she's smart, she'll stay away, Henry replied grimly. Blackwood's got at least a dozen men combing these mountains now. They stumbled through the forest, Henry half dragging Martha when she faltered. Behind them, she could hear shouts, the crashing of pursuit. Shadow stayed close, occasionally nudging her when she strayed from Henry's path. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes, the terrain changed. Martha felt the ground become harder, rockier. The echoing quality of the sounds around her suggested they were in some kind of canyon or ravine. Almost there. Henry muttered, slowing their pace to navigate the treacherous footing. Watch your step. There's an old mining shaft to the left, a straight drop of 50 feet. Martha clutched his arm, tighter terror gripping her at the thought of the unseen abyss beside them. The smell of the place hit her then, damp stone, rotting timbers, and that same metallic tang she had noticed in Bear Killer's description of the massacre site. Blood. Old blood. What is this place? She whispered. Henry hesitated before answering. One of Blackwood's early cleanup operations. A group of Indian miners who discovered coal on their own land. They disappeared about 3 years ago. He killed them, Martha said flatly, not a question. Yes. Henry's voice was strained. I didn't know about it then. Found out later after I started working for him. By then it was too late to do anything. There's always a choice, Henry. Maybe he conceded. But right now, our choice is hide or die. He guided her a few more steps, then she heard the creak of a door being pushed open. Inside, he ordered more gently than before. Mind the threshold. Martha stepped carefully into a space that smelled of dust and decay. Henry closed the door behind them, and she heard the sound of a bar falling into place. Sit, he said, guiding her to what felt like a rough bench. I need to check the windows, make sure we're not visible from outside. As Henry moved around the cabin, Martha extended her hands, feeling her surroundings. A table with a rough surface. Shelves with a few metal objects, tools perhaps. A small stove in the corner, cold to the touch. Shadow pressed against her legs, his warm presence reassuring in this house of death. Martha ran her hands gently over his wound, relieved to find it was indeed just a graze, painful, but not life-threatening. They'll find us here eventually, Henry said, returning to sit beside her. But maybe not before nightfall. In the dark, we might have a chance to slip away. And go where? Martha asked. The Shoshone camp will be gone by now. There's a trading post about 10 miles east of here. Henry replied. Man who runs it owes me a favor. He could get word to the army about what Blackwood's doing. Martha was silent for a long moment. Then carefully, you really do have the map and evidence against Blackwood? Yes. There was a rustling of paper as Henry extracted something from inside his coat. The map's remarkable. Must be 100 years old at least, but detailed enough to show every coal seam in the territory, every sacred site of the Shoshone. And these more rustling are Blackwood's own records. Orders for attacks on villages, receipts for bribes paid to army officers, plans for mining operations on treaty lands. Martha reached out her hand. "May I?" Hesitantly, Henry placed the papers in her palm. Martha ran her fingers over them, feeling the texture's thick, high-quality paper for the map thinner sheets for the documents. She couldn't read them, of course, but holding them gave her a strange sense of power. "Why did you take these?" she asked quietly. "The truth, Henry." He was silent for so long that Martha thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, stripped of its usual bravado. "At first for the money. Blackmail, like you said." He sighed heavily. "But then I read what was in those papers, saw the map, realized what it meant, what Blackwood was planning." Another pause. "I might be a worthless son, Mother, but even I have limits to what I can stomach." Martha wanted desperately to believe him, but decades of disappointments had taught her caution. "So now you're what's seeking redemption?" Henry laughed bitterly. "Hardly. Just trying to undo one small piece of the damage I've done. Maybe save a few lives to balance those I've helped destroy." Before Martha could respond, Shadow's head snapped up. A low growl rumbled in his chest, not the warning of immediate danger, but awareness of someone approaching. Martha tensed, clutching the papers tightly. "Someone's out there," Henry whispered, drawing his gun. "Stay quiet." A soft tapping came at the window, 3 quick knocks, then 2, then 3 again. The pattern Sage used when they were in the forest. "It's Sage," Martha exclaimed in relief. "Let her in." Henry hesitated. "How do you know it's not a trap Blackwood's men could have captured her, forced her to lead them here?" "Shadow would know," Martha insisted. "He'd smell her fear. Let her in, Henry." Still dubious, Henry moved to the window, opening it a crack. "Who's there?" "Friend of grandmother," Sage's voice replied softly. "Quick, others come soon." Henry unbarred the door gun, still at the ready. Martha heard it swing open, then Sage's swift, light footsteps entering the cabin. "Grandmother." Sage breathed, rushing to Martha's side. "Thank spirits you alive. Many men search forest. Very dangerous." "I'm all right," Martha assured her, embracing the girl briefly. "Henry helped me escape." "Not from kindness, I think," Sage said coldly, turning to face Henry. "Why you hear what you want?" "To stay alive," Henry replied bluntly, "and to stop Blackwood if I can." "Why should we believe you?" Sage demanded. "You leave your mother to die, work for men who kill our people." "Because of this," Henry said, gesturing to the papers Martha still held. "The map your people made, and proof of everything Blackwood has done and plans to do." Sage inhaled sharply. "The spirit map, you have it?" "Yes, and I'm willing to give it to you, to your people. It's rightfully yours." "In exchange for what?" Sage asked suspiciously. "Help getting to the army fort at Laramie," Henry answered. "With these papers and your testimony, we might be able to stop Blackwood before he wipes out every Shoshone in the territory." Sage was silent, considering. Then she turned to Martha. "What you think, grandmother? Can we trust son who betray you?" Martha weighed her words carefully. "I don't know if we can trust Henry," she admitted. "But I believe he wants Blackwood stopped. For now, that puts our interests in alignment." "Cold assessment, Mother," Henry commented with a hint of admiration. "But fair enough. We must hurry." Sage said, her decision apparently made. "Blackwood men find cabin soon. I know back way down mountain, lead to river, then to fort." "How far?" Henry asked. "We're half-day walk for strong legs," Sage replied. "Longer with grandmother, but safer than main trails." "Then let's go." Henry moved toward the door. Before, he never finished the sentence. A volley of gunshots suddenly shattered the cabin's single window, sending glass flying. Henry dove for cover, pulling Martha down with him. Sage flattened herself against the wall beside the door. "It's Blackwood's men," Henry shouted over the continued gunfire. They must have tracked us here. Back door, Martha asked desperately. No back door, Sage replied grimly. Only window too small for human. Then we're trapped. Martha realized clutching Shadow, who pressed protectively against her. Not necessarily, Henry said. There was a strange calm in his voice now, the calm of a man who had made a decision. The papers, Mother. Do you still have them? Martha clutched the documents tighter. Yes. Give them to Sage. She needs to get them to the fort. But how? There's a trap door under the table. Henry interrupted. Leads to an old mine shaft that comes out about half a mile downstream. It's narrow, but passable. He turned to Sage. You can guide my mother through it. Yes, Sage replied. But what about you? More gunshots peppered the cabin walls. A man's voice called from outside. Caldwell, we know you're in there. Send out the old woman and the Indian, and maybe Blackwood will let you live. Henry laughed harshly. See, they want you two alive, which means I'm the one they're really after. He checked his gun. I'll give you time to get through the tunnel. Hold them off as long as I can. Henry. Martha reached out, finding her son's arm. Don't do this. It's a little late for maternal concern, isn't it, Mother? But there was no real bitterness in his tone, only resignation. I'm not asking you to die for us, Martha said urgently. No, well, maybe I'm not doing it for you. Henry gently disengaged from her grip. Maybe I'm finally doing something for myself, something that matters. He helped Martha to her feet and guided her to the table. Sage helped me with this. Together, they moved the heavy table aside. Martha heard the creak of a trap door being lifted, felt the rush of cool, damp air from below. It'll be dark down there, Henry warned. But the path is straightforward. Just keep to the main tunnel, ignore any branching passages. When you reach the exit, you'll be near the river. Follow it east to the fort. Martha stood frozen, a storm of emotions overwhelming her. This was the son who had abandoned her to die now, preparing to sacrifice himself to save her. How could she reconcile these two versions of Henry? Here. Henry pressed something into her hand, a small leather pouch. In case I don't make it. There's a letter inside. Explains everything. Names of Blackwood's accomplices in the government. Locations of other documents I've hidden. Give it to the fort commander. No one else. Martha clutched the pouch, her fingers tightening around it. Henry, go, Mother. His voice was gentle but firm. Live. Make this right. Before she could protest further, another volley of gunfire hit the cabin. A bullet splintered the door. Now, Henry ordered, pushing Martha toward the trap door. Sage, get her out of here. Martha felt Sage's small, strong hands guiding her down rough, wooden steps. Shadow scrambled down after them. Above, she heard the trap door close, then the scrape of the table being dragged back into place. This way, grandmother. Sage whispered, taking Martha's hand and placing it on her shoulder. Stay close. Count steps. 15 forward, then turn right. They moved cautiously through the darkness, a darkness that was no different for Martha than daylight, but clearly challenging for Sage, who moved slowly, feeling her way along the rough-hewn walls. Above them, muffled by earth and timber, came the sound of more gunfire. Shouts, the crash of the cabin door being broken down. Then a single thunderous exchange that made the very ground around them tremble. Henry. Martha whispered, her heart clenching. Keep moving, Sage urged gently. Nothing we can do now. They continued through the narrow tunnel, the air growing danker, the sounds from above fading until there was only the sound of their own breathing and Shadow's occasional whine. The ground sloped gradually downward, becoming wetter underfoot. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, Sage stopped. River close now. Hear water. Martha listened. Yes, the distant sound of rushing water growing louder as they moved forward. The air felt fresher too, with a hint of pine and open spaces. Almost there, Sage encouraged. Few more steps. Suddenly, Shadow growled not his usual warning, but a sound of pure aggression. Before either of them could react, a new voice spoke from ahead of them. Well, well, what have we here? The cultured velvet over steel tones were unmistakable. Blackwood. Martha felt Sage stiffen beside her. How did I know about the tunnel? Blackwood finished for her. My dear, I had this place built. Did you really think I wouldn't know every exit, every escape route? His voice hardened. Now hand over the map and the documents, and I might let you live. We don't have them, Martha lied quickly. Henry kept them. Henry is dead, Blackwood stated flatly. Shot while trying to escape. And I know he gave you the papers before you went down that hole. I have men searching his body now, but I don't think they'll find anything. So I'll ask once more, give me what I want. Martha felt Sage's hand slip into hers, squeezing once a signal they had developed. Danger ahead, but also a plan. If we give you papers, Sage said carefully. How we know you let us go? You don't, Blackwood replied. But it's your only chance. Martha's mind raced. They were trapped in a narrow tunnel with Blackwood blocking their exit. Behind them, surely would be more of his men coming from the cabin. The papers hidden in her skirt pocket felt like they were burning against her leg, or the evidence that could destroy Blackwood, save the Shoshone, bring justice. She couldn't let him have them. Then an idea struck her, desperate, perhaps suicidal, but their only chance. I'll make you a deal, Blackwood, she said, injecting steel into her voice. These papers for our lives. But there's one more thing you should know. And what might that be, Mrs. Caldwell? His tone was patronizing, amused. Martha smiled grimly into the darkness. Henry sent copies. To the territorial governor, to the Army command at Fort Laramie, to newspapers in Chicago and New York. They're probably being read right now. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then Blackwood laughed, a sound devoid of any real humor. You're bluffing. There hasn't been time. Are you certain? Martha pressed. He stole those papers over a week ago. Plenty of time to make copies, send them east with the mail coach. Kill us if you want, but it won't save you. She heard Blackwood's breathing change, faster, shallower. Had she struck a nerve? Was he uncertain enough to hesitate? Liar. Blackwood snarled, but there was a note of doubt in his voice. You're just trying to save your skin. Perhaps, Martha conceded. But can you afford to take that chance? What would your government friends do if they thought you might implicate them? How quickly would they disavow you, sacrifice you to save themselves? Another silence, longer this time. Martha could almost feel Blackwood's mind working, calculating odds, weighing risks. Give me the papers, he finally demanded, and I'll let you go. You have my word. Your word. Martha laughed bitterly. Like the word you gave the Shoshone when you signed treaties, no, Mr. Blackwood. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to back away from that exit and let us pass. When we're safely away, we'll leave the papers where you can find them. Do you think I'm a fool? Blackwood's voice had turned deadly quiet. I think you're a survivor, Martha replied. And right now, your best chance of survival is to let us go and hope those copies don't exist. The silence stretched taut between them. Then Martha heard the rustle of movement, Blackwood backing away. Very well, Mrs. Caldwell. You win this round, but understand this isn't over. I will find you. Grandmother, Sage whispered urgently in Martha's ear. When I say now drop to ground, Shadow will know what to do. Martha gave a slight nod, imperceptible in the darkness. She felt the tension in Sage's body coiled like a spring. "Now," Sage hissed simultaneously, shoving Martha downward. Martha dropped instantly, pressing herself against the damp earth of the tunnel floor. Above her, chaos erupted. Shadow launched himself forward with a ferocious snarl, followed by Blackwood's startled cry and the deafening report of a pistol in the confined space. The bullet ricocheted off the tunnel wall with a whine. Sage moved like liquid shadow, ducking under Blackwood's arm as he grappled with the attacking dog. Martha heard the distinctive sound of a knife being drawn, followed by Blackwood's pained gasp. "Run, grandmother," Sage shouted, her voice strained with effort. Straight ahead, 20 steps to exit. Martha scrambled forward on hands and knees, counting desperately as she moved. Behind her, the sounds of struggle continued. Shadow's growls, Blackwood's curses, Sage's quick, hard breathing. Another gunshot thundered through the tunnel, followed by a yelp from Shadow that made Martha's heart seize. "Shadow," she cried, pausing in her flight. "Keep going," Sage commanded. Almost there, Martha forced herself onward, still counting. 17, 18. 19, her outstretched hands found empty air, then rough rock as the tunnel widened into what felt like a natural cave. The rush of the river was louder here, the air noticeably fresher. "Sage," she called back, fear constricting her throat. Instead of Sage's voice, Martha heard heavy footsteps, approaching too heavy for the slight Shoshone girl. "You've led me quite a chase, Mrs. Caldwell." Blackwood's voice was strained, breathless. "But it ends here." "Where's Sage?" Martha demanded, backing away toward the sound of rushing water. "What have you done to her?" "The Indian girl's still alive for now. Your mongrel too, though he won't be winning any races with that bullet in his leg." Blackwood's footsteps came closer. "The papers, Mrs. Caldwell." Now. Martha's back hit solid rock, a wall of the cave. She was trapped between it and Blackwood, with the sound of the river coming from somewhere to her right. She clutched the pouch Henry had given her in one hand, the ancient map and documents in the other. "Never," she said firmly, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "Then you'll die here," Blackwood replied simply. "Just another blind old woman lost in the wilderness. No one will even look for your body." Martha heard the metallic click of a gun being cocked. This was it then. After everything, Henry's betrayal, her rescue by Sage, the weeks with the Shoshone, her son's final sacrifice, it would end here in darkness at the hands of a man who saw people as nothing but obstacles to profit. No, not like this. With a speed born of desperation, Martha flung herself sideways toward the sound of the river. Blackwood's shot went wild, the bullet striking stone where she had stood moments before. Martha scrambled forward on her hands and knees, feeling her way along the rough cave floor. "You can't escape, you old fool," Blackwood shouted, his footsteps pounding after her. Martha's hands found the edge, a steep drop-off, where the cave opened out over the river below. How far down? 10 feet 50. She had no way of knowing, but it was her only chance. Blackwood's hand closed around her ankle, yanking her backward. Martha kicked out blindly with her other foot, connecting with something solid, his jaw perhaps, from the grunt of pain that followed. His grip loosened, and she pulled free. The map! Blackwood lunged for her again, his fingers catching the edge of her dress. In that desperate moment, Martha made her choice. She thrust Henry's pouch deep inside her clothing. But the map and Blackwood's documents, the evidence that could destroy him, she held out over the void. "Let me go," she demanded, "or they go into the river." "You wouldn't." Blackwood's voice held genuine alarm now. "You'd be destroying the only proof of your people's sacred lands. A better lost to the river than used by you to destroy them," Martha replied. "Release Sage and Shadow. Let us go." "Give me the papers first." Blackwood countered, his hand still gripping her dress. A new voice suddenly echoed through the cave. "Let her go, Blackwood. Henry, alive. Caldwell." Blackwood's shock was palpable. My men said you were dead. They were mistaken, Henry replied coldly. The unmistakable sound of a rifle being cocked punctuated his words. Now back away from my mother. You're bluffing, Blackwood said, though uncertainly. I can't see you in this darkness. You could be unarmed, wounded. You want to bet your life on it? Henry challenged. I've got a Winchester repeating rifle aimed at your head. Even in the dark at this distance, I can't miss. Martha felt Blackwood's grip loosen, then release entirely. This isn't over, Caldwell, he growled. It is for you, Henry replied. The army's on their way. Seems some of your men had a change of heart when they found out what you've been doing to the Indians. A massacre of women and children is something even hardened gunmen have trouble stomaching. You're lying. Blackwood's voice had lost its cultured edge, revealing the desperate man beneath. Am I listen? In the distance, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of many horses approaching the rhythmic drumbeat of a cavalry unit at full gallop. Blackwood swore viciously. You'll regret this, Caldwell. Both of you. His footsteps retreated rapidly, moving deeper into the cave system. Let him go. Henry set his voice suddenly closer to Martha. There's no other way out of those caves. The army will find him. Henry. Martha reached out blindly. You're alive. How? No time to explain. He cut her off, taking her hand. We need to get out of here. This whole area is unstable. That's why the mine was abandoned. The gunfire could trigger a collapse. As if confirming his words, a low rumble shook the cave dust and small stones showering down on them. Sage, Shadow, Martha asked urgently. The girl's hurt but alive. She's already outside. The dog too bullet just grazed him. Relief flooded Martha, followed immediately by renewed fear as another stronger tremor shook the cave. Henry, the papers, Blackwood's evidence. Keep them safe, Henry urged, pulling her to her feet. Just a few more steps and we're out. He guided her forward, one hand firm on her elbow. Martha could feel fresh air on her face, now smell pine and open sky. Then they were outside, the cave mouth behind them, solid ground beneath their feet. Grandmother. Sage's voice, weak but alive, called from nearby. Martha pulled free of Henry, moving toward the sound. Her knees hit soft earth as she knelt beside Sage, hands quickly finding the girl's face, her shoulders. Where are you hurt? Knife cut side. Sage replied, her breathing shallow but steady. Not deep. Will heal? Shadow whined and pressed against Martha's leg. She ran her hands over him, finding the wound on his flank bleeding, but, as Henry had said, not serious. We need to move, Henry urged. Those tremors are getting stronger. The whole cave system could go any minute. As if in response, a deafening crack split the air, followed by the ominous sound of shifting earth and rock. From inside the cave came a scream Blackwood Martha realized with horror. The man who had caused so much suffering now trapped in darkness. We have to help him, she said, struggling to her feet. It's too late, Henry replied grimly. That passage has already collapsed. No one could survive that. Another tremor, stronger than before, threw Martha off balance. Henry caught her, steadying her as the ground continued to shake beneath them. The horses, Sage gasped. By Big Pine, 100 steps that way. Henry scooped Sage into his arms. Lead the way, Mother. Keep your hand on my shoulder. We need to reach those horses before this whole hillside comes down. Martha placed one hand on Henry's shoulder, the other on Shadow, who limped beside her. Together they moved away from the collapsing cave, the sound of destruction growing fainter behind them as they struggled through underbrush and over uneven ground. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only minutes, they reached the horses, 3 of them tied to a large pine, just as Sage had said. Henry gently placed Sage on the smallest mount, then helped Martha onto another. Can you ride? He asked, concerned. I may be blind, But I grew up on the frontier, Martha replied with grim determination. Just tie my reins to your saddle and lead the way. Shadow whimpered, unable to follow on his injured leg. Without hesitation, Henry lifted the dog, settling him in front of Martha on her horse. Hold on to him, he instructed, placing her arms around the animal. He's losing blood, but he'll make it if we get him to help soon. They rode hard, Henry leading Martha's horse, Sage swaying but keeping her seat on her own mount. Behind them, the sounds of the cave's collapse gradually faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the growing noise of the approaching cavalry. When the army patrol found them an hour later, they were a bedraggled sight, a blind woman clutching a wounded dog, a bleeding Indian girl barely conscious in her saddle, and a man with a bullet graze across his temple and powder burns on his face. Henry Caldwell. The patrol leader, a young lieutenant, called out as they approached. We got your message. Where's Blackwood? Dead, Henry replied shortly. Caught in a cave-in, but I have something better than Blackwood. He gestured to Martha. My mother has all the evidence. You need the map, the documents showing his crimes, the names of his collaborators in the government and army. The lieutenant's eyes widened slightly, then he nodded. We'll need statements from all of you, and medical attention clearly. He turned to his sergeant. Set up camp here. Send 2 men back to Fort Laramie with word of Blackwood's death and request for a wagon for these civilians. As the soldiers bustled around them, setting up a hasty camp and tending to their wounds, Martha finally had a moment to speak privately with her son. How did you survive? She asked quietly. I heard the gunfire, the fight at the cabin. Henry's laugh was short-pained. Pure luck. One of Blackwood's men recognized me from years back, a gambling debt I'd actually paid. Made him hesitate just long enough for me to dive out the back window. He paused. Window that I'd told you was too small for a human. It wasn't comfortable, but I made it work. You lied to ensure we'd take the tunnel, Martha realized. I needed you and the girl safely away with those papers, Henry confirmed. I didn't expect to survive, honestly. But when I did, I figured I'd better make it count. Use the distraction to circle around behind them, pick off a few with my rifle. Convinced one of Blackwood's less loyal men that the army was already onto them, that turning evidence would save his neck. And was it true about the army coming? Pure bluff, Henry admitted. But I sent the man riding for Fort Laramie anyway, with a message about Blackwood's location and crimes. Figured if I was going to die, I'd make sure the truth came out afterward. Martha reached out, finding Henry's face with her fingers. The features were the same, the strong jaw from Thomas, the high forehead that matched her own. But the lines were deeper now, etched with experiences she could only imagine. Why Henry? Why this sudden change? He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low, troubled. It wasn't sudden, Mother. It's been coming for years. Every time I watched Blackwood destroy another family, another community. Every time I helped him do it. His hand covered hers where it rested against his cheek. When I left you in the snow, something broke in me. Even I couldn't justify that. And then when I found that map, saw what Blackwood was planning. You found your conscience? Martha suggested softly. Henry laughed, the sound bitter. Maybe. Or maybe just my limit for how much evil I could participate in. He gently removed her hand from his face. Don't make me into a hero, Mother. I'm not. One decent act doesn't erase years of wrong. No, Martha agreed. But it's a start. 2 days later, they reached Fort Laramie, Martha, Henry, Sage, and Shadow transported in a military wagon with an escort of cavalry. Sage's wound was healing well, as was Shadow's. Henry's injuries were more serious than he'd let on. The bullet grazed to his temple, had fractured his skull, leaving him with blinding headaches and occasional confusion. Martha's physical injuries were minor, but the emotional toll of their ordeal had left her exhausted. At the fort, they were separated for individual questioning. Martha presented the map and documents, along with Henry's pouch containing names of Blackwood's collaborators. Army officers pored over the evidence, their initial skepticism giving way to grim confirmation as witness after witness corroborated the details. When they were finally allowed to meet again 3 days later, it was in the fort commander's office, a Colonel James Barrett, whose deep voice rumbled with restrained anger as he addressed them. "The evidence you've provided is disturbing, to say the least," he began. "Blackwood's operations went far beyond anything we suspected. The illegal mining, the forged orders to clear Indian lands, the massacres." He shook his head. "Several officers have already been arrested, and there will be more once the federal marshals arrive from Denver. And the Shoshone." Sage asked, her voice stronger now. "What of our lands, our sacred sites?" "Your treaty rights will be upheld," Colonel Barrett assured her. "I've already dispatched riders to all Shoshone camps in the territory, informing them they can return to their lands without fear of harassment. As for the sacred sites," he gestured to the ancient map spread carefully on his desk. "This is a remarkable document. My recommendation to Washington will be that these areas be specifically protected under federal supervision." "And my son?" Martha asked quietly. "What of him?" The colonel cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mr. Caldwell's situation is complicated. He was Blackwood's employee, participated in some of his schemes. But he also risked his life to expose those crimes and save both of you. The judge will have to determine his fate." "I don't expect leniency," Henry said flatly. "I've done plenty to deserve punishment." "Perhaps," Colonel Barrett conceded. "But your cooperation has been noted. And there's something else." He withdrew an envelope from his desk drawer. "This arrived by special courier yesterday. It seems, Mr. Caldwell, that you weren't entirely forthcoming with us." "Sir," Henry sounded genuinely confused. "You told us you had no copies of these documents, that the ones Mrs. Caldwell carried were the originals and only copies." "That's right," Henry confirmed cautiously. "Then how do you explain this?" The colonel opened the envelope, extracting several sheets of paper. "Copies of Blackwood's directives, including some that weren't in the documents you provided, along with a detailed letter explaining his operation. Delivered to the Chicago Tribune 3 weeks ago with instructions to publish if anything happened to you." Martha felt Henry stiffen beside her. I sent those before I fully understood what was happening," he said slowly. "Insurance, in case Blackwood discovered I was stealing from him. I didn't know then that I'd find the map or the full extent of his plans." The colonel sounded unconvinced, but didn't press further. "Well, whatever your initial motives, the result is the same. Blackwood's operation has been exposed, his collaborators are being rounded up, and the Shoshone lands will be protected." He rose, signaling the end of their meeting. "You'll remain at the fort until the federal marshals arrive. After that, your futures are in the hands of the territorial court." As they left the office, Martha placed her hand on Henry's arm. "You made copies," she said quietly. "You were planning to expose Blackwood all along." "Not exactly," Henry admitted. "Like I told the colonel, it was insurance at first. But yes, I sent copies to newspapers before I came looking for you, in case things went badly." "You're a better man than you want to admit," Martha observed. Henry's laugh was soft-pained. "No, Mother. I'm exactly the man I've always been looking out for myself first. It just happened that this time doing the right thing aligned with my interests." Martha wasn't convinced, but she let it go, Whatever Henry's motivations, the outcome was what mattered: justice for the Shoshone, an end to Blackwood's reign of terror. The weeks that followed brought significant changes. The federal marshals arrived, taking testimonies and gathering evidence. Sage was reunited with her people, who established a camp near the fort during the proceedings. Martha stayed at the fort, her testimony considered crucial to the case against Blackwood's collaborators. Henry was held under house arrest, comfortable, but confined, his fate uncertain, as the territorial judge weighed his crimes against his cooperation. One crisp autumn morning, Martha sat on a bench outside the officers' quarters, enjoying the sunlight on her face. Shadow lay at her feet, fully recovered now, and as vigilant as ever. Footsteps approached Sage from the light, quick tread. "Grandmother." The girl greeted her warmly, sitting beside her. "Good news from council. Bear killer returned with many warriors. All camps reunited now." "That is good news," Martha agreed, squeezing Sage's hand. "And what of the spirit map?" "Colonel, make copies, send original to Washington City. But promise maps stay with our people too. Sacred sites will have protection from soldiers now." "And you?" Martha asked. "What will you do now that your people are safe?" Sage was quiet for a moment. "Council say I have special connection to White World now. Ask me to be what you call ambassador. Speak for Shoshone to army to settlers." "That's a great honor," Martha said, "and a great responsibility." "Yes," Sage agreed solemnly. "But not do alone. Council ask if Martha, grandmother, will help. Teach me white ways while I teach you more of Shoshone ways." Martha felt tears spring to her eyes, unexpected and warming. "They want me to stay with you, with the Shoshone." "If you wish," Sage replied simply. "You are family now." Family. The word resonated in Martha's heart. She had lost so much: her sight, her home, very nearly her life. But in the process, she had found something precious, a new family, a new purpose. "There's something else you should know." Sage continued, her voice careful now. "About your son." Martha tensed. "What about Henry?" "Judge make decision yesterday. Henry not go to prison." The what? Martha couldn't hide her surprise. "Colonel Barrett speak for him. Say, Henry key witness, need freedom to testify against others. Judge agree Henry get" "What word?" "Probation, must stay in territory, report to lawmen, but not in prison." Martha sat back stunned. After everything, Henry would walk free. It was more than she had dared hope for. "He asked to see you," Sage added. "Wait in commander office now." Minutes later, Martha sat across from her son, Shadow alert at her feet. The room had been cleared to give them privacy. "So," she said after an awkward silence, "probation instead of prison. Shocking, isn't it?" Henry's voice held a hint of his old cynicism. "Turns out, being a duplicitous bastard has its advantages when you need to convincingly play both sides." "And what will you do with this second chance?" Martha asked. Henry sighed, and she heard the creak of his chair as he shifted. "I'm leaving for Denver tomorrow. The territorial governor, the new one, not Blackwood's man, has offered me a position. Special investigator into corruption in the mining industry." Martha couldn't help but laugh. "The fox guarding the henhouse, more like a reformed poacher turned gamekeeper," Henry countered with a wry chuckle. "I know all the tricks, all the schemes. Who better to catch others at the same game? And will you be honest in this new role?" Martha couldn't keep the doubt from her voice. "I don't know, Mother." Henry admitted, his tone suddenly serious. "I'd like to think so. But I've been crooked for a long time. It gets to be a habit." He paused. "All I can promise is that I'll try to do better than I have before." Martha nodded slowly. It was perhaps the most honest answer he had ever given her. Sage tells me the Shoshone have invited me to stay with them, to help her as she learns to work with the army with settlers. Will you accept? Henry asked. I think so, Martha replied. There's nothing left for me at the cabin, even if I could reclaim it. And the Shoshone have become... She searched for the right word. Family. They're lucky to have you, Henry said softly. After a moment, he added, I have something for you. A parting gift. She heard him place something on the table between them. Your locket, the one you gave Sage. And I've added something to it, a small photograph of Father, taken just before he died. I've carried it all these years. Martha reached out her fingers, finding the familiar silver oval now, with a new weight inside it. Thank you, she whispered, emotion closing her throat. I also put some money in an account for you at the bank in Laramie. Henry continued briskly, as if embarrassed by the sentiment. Not stolen, he added quickly. My legitimate earnings from before Blackwood. It's not much, but it should help you and your new family get established. Martha clutched the locket, this tangible connection to both her past and future. Will I see you again? She asked. I don't know, Henry admitted. But I'll write. And perhaps someday, when I've proven that this change is real. He left the thought unfinished. When Martha left the commander's office, Sage was waiting for her. The girl took her arm, guiding her across the fort's parade ground, where the sounds of military life continued around them, horses being groomed, orders being shouted, supplies being unloaded. You sad, grandmother? Sage asked perceptively. Not sad, Martha replied thoughtfully. Just reflective. Henry is leaving tomorrow, starting a new life in Denver. You wish to go with him? Martha shook her head firmly. No, my place is with you and your people now. But he is still my son, despite everything. Sage squeezed her arm gently. Blood ties never fully break, even when stretched thin by betrayal. Like river that goes underground, cannot see but still flows. Wise as always. Martha smiled. When do we leave for your people's camp? 2 days, Sage replied. After you speak to Judge one last time. Bear killers say we make new camp for winter near hot springs. Good place for old bones like ours. Martha laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in months. Who are you calling old? I'm barely getting started in my new life. 3 days later, Martha stood at the edge of the Shoshone winter camp, breathing in the crisp mountain air. Around her, the sounds of a community at work filled her ears. Women preparing hides, men returning from a successful hunt, children playing chase between the lodges. Shadow lay at her feet, occasionally rising to investigate some interesting smell, before returning to his self-appointed post as her guardian. Bear Killer approached his tread, distinctive and familiar now. New lodge ready for you and daughter, he announced gruffly. Near center, close to council fire, good place for wise women. Martha inclined her head in thanks. I'm honored. Honor is camp's, Bear Killer replied. You bring justice for our dead. Return sacred map to people. Give us voice with white soldiers. He paused. Thomas' husband would be proud. Tears stung Martha's eyes at the unexpected kindness. I hope so. I know so, Bear Killer stated confidently. Man builds good house, chooses good wife, plants seeds for future he never sees. This is wisdom. As Bear Killer moved away, Sage took his place beside Martha. Ready to see new home, grandmother. Lead the way. Martha smiled, placing her hand on Sage's arm. As they walked through the camp, greetings called out from all sides. Names Martha was still learning, voices becoming familiar day by day. Not just survivors now, but a community. Not just a blind old woman and a Shoshone girl thrown together by circumstance, but family bound by choice and trial. The cabin Thomas built was gone. But the life she had known with Henry shattered beyond repair. Yet here, in this unexpected place, Martha had found something she thought lost, forever belonging. That night, as she sat by the council fire, listening to the elders discuss plans for the winter, the ancient spirit map spread carefully before them. Martha reflected on the strange path that had led her here. Betrayed by her son, cast out to die, saved by a stranger, caught in a web of greed and corruption, and emerging not broken, but transformed. "You smile, grandmother," Sage observed, settling beside her. "Happy thoughts?" "Yes," Martha admitted. "I was thinking about sight, how losing my eyes forced me to see with my heart. How darkness can reveal truths hidden in light." Sage nodded thoughtfully. "Great shamans say eyes that see only outside world remain blind to inner wisdom." Martha reached out, finding Sage's hand and squeezing it gently. "Your grandmother was right to entrust you with her wisdom. You've shared it well." The fire crackled sparks, ascending toward stars Martha could no longer see, but knew were their constant, eternal watching over this new beginning as they had watched over all the endings that preceded it. In the darkness behind her, unseeing eyes, Martha had found a light, more enduring than any she had known before, the light of a spirit restored. A purpose renewed, a family reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. She was home at last.